Oh, hey, Bikerumor and Bikerumor people. This is the Ferg Dog from Ritchey, and I'm here to answer some of your stupid questions about gravel bars. First of all, thank you to everyone who wrote in with your stupid question, and we have some potentially good answers for you. So, without further ado, let's dive into some of our favorites. What's the deal with internal routing on gravel drop bars? Sure, it is nice to have a clean setup on an aero road bike, but if I'm talking about gravel, it's definitely got hydraulic disc brakes. Not always. So now I need to re-bleed my brakes and sometimes install new olives and barb and even trim my hoses anytime I want to try a new bar. And doesn't putting holes in the bars create a weak point where it might fail? Gravel bikes get ridden on some crazy off-road trails by a lot of people, often loaded with bike packing bags. So are they really safe enough? Well, here's the thing. If you don't want to use the holes, don't use them. Just run your hose underneath. It's not a big deal. We had a similar thing with a stem in the past where, people kept saying like, I'm changing my bars all the time, and the stem was a problem for them. Who changes their bars that often? I think once when you get a bar that you like and it's your favorite, it has internal routing, you just route it in there. It's nice and clean. One of the nice things about having internal routing is, if you have a bag set up or if you put your hands up there, it's not like you have something else to kind of distract you. So that's kind of a big one for us. Not to mention more and more off-road and gravel riders are going with Di2. So they want something that is nice and seamless, fairly well hidden. Regarding the holes, no, it doesn't create a weak point. Here's the thing. All handlebar companies, if they're worth their salt, all have to meet minimum standards set by the ISO for strength, including Ritchey. And on top of that, we create further testing to better simulate real-world application. So we make sure that our bars are as strong, if not stronger, and meant to withstand more than the bare minimum that is ISO. So we really wouldn't, we just wouldn't come out with a bar that would have a built-in weak spot. Of course, we want you to not worry about that. What's the deal with those crazy bumps in the VentureMax bar? Do they really offer some ergonomic improvement or better grip? I feel like they would just limit my ability to move my hands around the bars. Here's the deal with the crazy bend. We first released it with the Biomax bar. And what that is akin to having arch support in your shoes. So, you have to imagine that your hands are kind of a similar bone structure to a degree as your feet. And you want to offer a certain amount of support kind of in the palm area for those long mixed terrain rides. If for some reason that BioBend doesn't appeal to you, well, we have the Beacon. It's a very similar bar, very wide flare. It has a compact drop. So what that means is it's a smooth radius on the outside and no BioBend. So if that's not really floating your boat, we have options for that. But to answer your question, yes, it does offer an ergonomic solution or an ergonomic benefit to your handlebar. Good question. I'm new to the scene. Hello, welcome to the scene. What's the point of flaring the dropouts on a handlebar for gravel bikes? Well, the idea is a couple of things, and it depends on your riding style. So if you're a pure traditionalist and you want just a normal bar, go with that. I'm not stopping you. The nice thing about having a flared drop bar is when you're on the hoods, your hands and arms in a certain position. When you go to a flared drop, it allows you to open up that chest cavity. So it gives you a couple of things. You get a bit more stability and control when navigating kind of uncertain terrain, and it opens up the chest as well. Most of the time, the more flare you have, the shallower the drop. So that's the deal with having a flared bar for off-road. Will an alloy handlebar ever feel as good as a carbon handlebar on rough roads or gravel where there's a lot of small bumps and vibration. Yeah, you know, the of course the nice thing about a carbon handlebar is the nature of the material, the fibers in combination with the resin that holds it all together really do a lot to absorb road noise, rough terrain, that kind of thing, while also being very stiff and lightweight. What we do with our alloy, especially our WCS level, is try to get as close to that same sensation as with carbon. So we really pay attention to the budding profile of the tubing that we use for our WCS bars, making sure that you not only have a good ride quality, but a very responsive handlebar as well. So to answer your question, yes, yeah, an alloy bar can feel pretty darn close to a carbon bar if constructed appropriately. Some of Ritchey's past handlebars and those from other brands have curved the top, flat parts of the handlebar back or forward, I forget which. What's the ergonomic or performance advantage for that sweep on the tops of a drop bar, and which way is better, forward or backward? What you're referring to in what we call backsweep is a physiological ergonomic benefit of handlebars. So if you imagine that, you put your hands out and make two fists, as if you're holding on to something, the way that your knuckles are actually curving back is similar to that of the bars that we offer in our Evo curve. So we try to mimic that so that you have a very natural experience with the top of your handlebar. Thinking of bars where there's forward sweep, I would imagine it would be like a track handlebar, or even something like a criterium handlebar where you go directly from the stem to the drops, and the idea is that you're in the drops most of the time that you're engaged with that handlebar. But to answer your question, backsweep is an ergonomic benefit meant to mimic the natural stance of your hands. Seems like a lot of handlebars meant for gravel bikes have a shallower drop than regular road bikes. Why? There's a few things going on when we talk about, when we address a shallower drop for a wide flared bar. And it has to do with your relationship to your front end. So let's say you've been fit on your bike and your normal road stance is such. When you add flare, and let's say you have a lot of flare, like something like our Beacon or Venturemax, and the bar comes out, if you maintain that same drop as your road bar, but add more flare, then it's pulling your front end down and you're really stretching yourself out. But when you have a more shallow drop, you're still maintaining that same position to your front end. Something else that gets brought up that we don't immediately address but should be noted is, when you start going with these wider and wider gravel bars, you're going from this set position to out here. Now, if you maintain the same reach of your stem, let's say you're riding a 110 or 120, you go from this kind of thing to now reaching way forward and wider. So when you go with a wider gravel bar, you're actually going to want to shorten your stem so that, again, you maintain that same relationship to your front end. So all of these things combined not only give you more control of your gravel bike in kind of dodgy situations, but also maintain your fit profile and relationship to the front end of your bike. Okay, dude, Ritchey, some of your flare bars have crazy wide flare angles, kind of like that salsa wood chipper. Yeah, well, maybe. What's the point of having the drops stick out so wide? Is there a benefit? Seems like maybe they get caught on stuff. Well, don't catch them on stuff. Yeah, so there's a lot of companies that are making wide drop bars. We don't have to name all of them. Thank you for naming a competitor. But there's plenty of room in the market for everyone to have their own take on this category. The crazy wide flare, again, we talk about flare and the amount of flare as having to do with control and stability and what that does for you on your ride. So yeah, a wider bar, again, the further away you get from the stem, the more control you're going to have. So what's the deal? The deal is offering a better handling ride experience. So I get why the drops are flared, but not why the hoods have to be splayed at 30 to 45 degrees, which is unrideable for me due to wrist strain. Why can't you make a flared drop bar that only angles out below where the brifters, that's a brifter, clamps, similar to the 3T Super Hygiena, what the, Envy Sus, and Zip Explorer. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, so I've seen those bars that you're talking about where the hoods mount for your shifters or brakes or what have you is very vertical, so that when you're in your angled out position, maybe it's easier to drop or access those. Every company is going to have their own take on gravel bars, and certainly we feel that we have created a bar that is right, but everyone's different, so anyway, to answer your question, 45 degrees is extreme. Ideally, your shifters will match your bars, right? So if there's a 36 degree, like with our beacon, it lines up with that. And if your hands are angled out, you kind of want your shifters to be angled out as well. But if you're on the hoods, I could see how that could come out a bit far. I personally have yet to experience that as being detrimental to my ride experience. So I don't know how to answer your question. Why can't you make a flared drop bar like those other companies? We aren't those other companies. So yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. How wide is too wide? As a bigger guy, I've always struggled to find bars that didn't feel narrow. Also, as a bigger guy, aero isn't a concern for me. I now have 52 centimeter bars at the hoods on my gravel bike, and it's freaking fantastic. That's awesome. It's really cool, actually. I like hearing stuff like that. Where do you see the trend for wide drop bars ending? Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, you look at mountain, right? And when I was a kid mountain biking, bars were like about as wide as your shoulders, right? Like I think it was 560 was considered wide back then. And now you have 800, which to me seems bonkers. We offer a 52. We measure our drop bars at the initial bend, not necessarily at the hood. So the hood will actually measure a little bit wider than 52 on our Benchmax XL. Where does it end? I see there's diminishing returns to how wide a drop bar can be before it's too wide, right? And physiology will dictate that. Some people that have narrower shoulders or more narrow chest cavity may actually do better on a wider bar than one would suspect. Likewise, some people that have wider shoulders might do better on a narrower bar. It all depends. I can't really speak to how wide is too wide. Right now, 52 seems to be kind of that sweet spot. More than that, and you're really getting into kind of a crazy territory. But who knows? There's always people that want to go a little bit bigger. But as far as a fit standpoint, it's really good to hear that finally there's bars available to you as a bigger person. And on the same but opposite end of the spectrum, for people of smaller stature, having bars available in a 40 or 38 means that they now have more accessibility. So yeah, I think we're in a great time right now as far as fit options go for people and bar width. Does Ritchey ever plan on building a steel full suspension bike? No. Although, fun fact, Ritchey did have a full suspension bike. It was more of a soft tail. I had kind of like an elastomer kind of at the seat stay junction, and there was flex to it. We also did a soft ride. But as of now, no, we aren't going to do a full suspension bike. What does that have to do with gravel bars, man? It's more of a 2 beers with Ritchey question. Oh boy, here we go. Can you please explain the point of flared drop bars? I can see that wider bars give more control, but a lot of people ride on the hoods in technical terrain because they feel that the higher position gives more control. Okay. Such people should therefore use drop bars that are wider at the hoods, not just at the drops. It's a little weird. The drops should be used in situations where aerodynamics are more important. So I don't know why anyone would want the drops to be any wider than the hoods. For me, gravel bars should just be a wider version of standard road bars. Personally, I use 40 centimeter wide Ritchey Evo curved bars, very nice, on my road bike, and the same bar in a 42 on my gravel bike. And I can't see any need to go wider. But if I did, I would still want the hoods to be as wide as the drops. Are flared drop bars just a way to make things look different and make people think they need to buy something that they don't need? I hope you can solve this mystery for me. Thanks. Oh boy. I would classify this under different strokes for different folks. In general, I think I agree with you. You definitely see, kind of roadiness coming over into gravel, right? Like, I believe the winner of the race in Kansas last year, the 200, he was riding something like 38s or something on some aero carbon bars. They did have some flair to them, and you definitely see more roadies and trackies coming over to gravel and riding just bonkers narrow bars. But that's a different type of athlete than someone that's doing a dirt fondo or doing a grinduro or one of those kinds of gravel races that is looking for more stability. And so when we're talking about a flared drop bar, if it has a lot of flare to it, like our Venture Max, like our Beacon, the drops get shallower because of what you're saying, how people don't want to be so low in their drop when they're navigating that kind of dubious terrain. That stated, a bar that's wider at the hood than in the drop, I just imagine I'd be knocking my forearms against it all day long. So, when we design our flared drop bar, we want to make sure that we have nice forearm clearance as well. Again, because of, if you're navigating this terrain, you don't want to have any kind of hangups whatsoever. But that isn't to say that gravel bars have to be a specific type of bar, right? They don't have to all be flared drop bars. And in fact, my gravel bike doesn't have flared drop bars, but that's me. Again, different strokes, different folks. I know plenty of people that really swear by having a really wide flared drop bar for their off-road bike. So, well, there you go. There was our favorites from Ask a Stupid Question with Ritchey. If you have any more questions, you can shoot them in the comments section below. One of my favorite pastimes is to read the Bikerumor comments section. If you want to reach out to Ritchey directly, feel free to reach out to us, ritcheydesign@ritcheylogic.com. And that's it. So thanks again for tuning in to Bikerumor, Ask a Stupid Question. There's no stupid questions, right? There's just less stupid answers. So until next time, we'll catch you then.